And I'd say right now, here are my two front runners. And the first one, the person who probably will have the most money is Jay Pritzker if he runs governor of Illinois. Now, that's not because he's a great fundraiser. It's because he's a billionaire. And if he does run, he'll put in his own money. Now, that's not as good as the grassroots money because it doesn't demonstrate support. And the fact is, when you spend your own money on a campaign, it tends to deter people from giving you money. That's why one of the reasons, besides the fact that he doesn't like to spend money, that Donald Trump was reluctant to self-fund his campaign. Because if you're a student of this, you know, if you're a millionaire or a billionaire and you start to fund the campaign yourself, it's very hard to get people to give money because they say, why should I give a millionaire or a billionaire money when they've got all the money they need? But if Pritzker runs, I think he'll raise some. He has a lot of rich friends. I don't know how good a grassroots fundraiser he'll be, but he'll raise a lot. Rahm Emanuel's number 2 on my list, also from Illinois. First of all, he's one of the best fundraisers in the history of Democratic politics, starting with that Bill Clinton campaign, but raising money for himself, for the DCCC, when he did that for raising money for House candidates. He knows almost every rich Democratic donor in the country, in Hollywood, Silicon Valley, New York, Chicago, of course. So I think he'll be a big bundler. And then his brother, Hollywood super agent Ari Emanuel, I suspect will run a super PAC, help to raise money for a super PAC for that campaign. Now, will he be a good grassroots fundraiser? I don't know, but I know he'll try hard to do that. So those are my top 2 for money. Number 2 in the rankings is the question of the record and the issues. What have you done in office that you can take to the voters and say, here's how I can help you. Here's how I can make your education more affordable, housing more affordable. And the people who tend to do better in this category are governors or former governors because they've run something. They've had their own agendas. Harder to do this if you're a member of Congress, not impossible. So my top 2 in this category are 2 guys who are in office now. Josh Shapiro, who's up for re-election in 2026. And in that campaign, we'll get a sense of his abilities in general, but also his ability to sell the Pennsylvania record. What is he going to talk about as he runs for election that speaks to the question of, will he be an effective messenger for the Pennsylvania miracle? That's what most governors who run call their state's performance and their policy positions. And then Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky, Democrat in a red state. Shapiro governs in a purple state. Beshear is term limited, so he's not running for election. And he's got an opportunity to talk to people about what he's done in Kentucky. A lot of interest in his record in Kentucky in the abstract, right? A Democrat who's done well in a state that's moved decisively red at the federal level and most of the state offices. So what was Andy Beshear going to talk about? What's he going to sell? Right now, he's selling more vagaries. What specifics will he talk about? Next category in the rankings, the visible primary here, the primary below the surface, is the story, the bio. What do you say to people? You think about Bill Clinton, the man from Hope. You think about George Bush talking about giving up drinking on his 40th birthday and turning his life around. Barack Obama, grandparents from Kansas, growing up in Hawaii. These stories are important for the American people to get to know you, see you as a three-dimensional person. But they're most effective when you can connect the story of what you've done, how you've lived your life, your bio before you ran for office, with what you've done in elective office. And my top 2 here are 2 guys with incredible bios, incredible stories. It helps if your wife is involved too, or your spouse, I should say, to fill out your bio, maybe your kids as well. Wes Moore, governor of Maryland, has a great story. Grew up under challenging circumstances in Maryland, in the military, worked in Robin Hood Foundation, private sector, wrote an incredible book, and then is now in his first elective office, the governor of Maryland. Ro Khanna, congressman from California, originally from Pennsylvania, from a family with great immigrant stories on both his side and his wife's side, and a family that's got mixed political views and who understands the economy from the point of view of both Pennsylvania, which of course is Rust Belt, and Silicon Valley that he represents now. I think both those guys have the ability, not just on paper to have great bios, but they tell their stories well, and they do a great job of integrating their personal histories with what they want to do for the country. All right, the next category is early states. Here I got Wes Moore as number 1, Gavin Newsom, California governor, number 2. What is it about early states? We don't know what the calendar is. Back in 2002, And in the modern era, since President Reagan, the early states were clear. The early states were Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. Then, there's been a little bit of mix after that. Super Tuesday got created, but the importance of those first few states is massive. And Joe Biden exploded that a little bit. He moved the calendar around, and then he didn't do well in the early states, but he still became the nominee. Typically, though, you need to win one of the first two, maybe one of the first three at most of the early states to win a nomination. We don't know what the early states will be. So how can I rank Wes Moore 1 and Gavin Newsom 2? I can do it because they are active in the states that they think will be early, particularly South Carolina. And they have the kind of operations that have shown the ability to try to game this out and say, we don't know what will be the early states, but whatever they are, we understand the early state game. What's the early state game? Courting the local political reporters, courting the local, federal, and state elected officials whose endorsements and political operations will matter, spending time on the ground with grassroots. So watch those two guys as the early state calendar develops and clarifies by the DNC process. Where do they go? And am I right that they're the ones who are going to have the ability to get traction there? All right, next factor, electability. I got Josh Shapiro, number 1, and then Gina Raimondo, number 2, former governor of Rhode Island and former Commerce Secretary for Joe Biden, very popular with the business wing of the Democratic Party. Why do I put these two, Shapiro 1, Raimondo 2? Because they've got a history of getting elected in general elections, Shapiro in a purple state, Raimondo in a Republican, in a Democratic state, but with a lot of business support. And as I talk to the kind of donors and politicians and some folks in the activist community who care about electability, they're not looking for someone they agree with on every issue. They're not looking for someone who has the ability to tug the heartstrings of the base of the party. They're looking for somebody who can win 270 electoral votes. Shapiro 1, Raimondo 2 are the people whose names I hear the most. Okay, next is the hang test. Who do you want to have a beer with? Or if the candidate doesn't drink, who do you just want to hang on the corner with? Maybe go to Disney World with? Number 1 for hang test, I got Pete Buttigieg. Number 2, Josh Shapiro. These are two guys who are not afraid to go on conservative media, whether it's Fox or conservative podcasts. They're likable. They can talk like real people. And the hang test is key. If you look at people who do well in politics, people want to be ability to think about somebody they like. At the same time, they do want the president up on a pedestal a little bit. So I would see, based on what we've observed so far, that Buttigieg and Shapiro are going to be 1 and 2 in knowing how to appeal to people in kind of a personal and human way. All right, the next category, made for TV. Gavin Newsom, number 1, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. What's this about? This is just, can you go on different television programs or YouTube programs and do well? Do you handle yourself well? Fun questions, challenging questions, policy questions. Do you come across in that medium as likable? Now, again, TV means different things to different people these days. In this case, it means anything with video, right? Anything where you're going to be interviewed or people are going to be asking you questions or giving a speech, whatever it is. Those are two, I think, of the top red light performers when the camera's on. All right, next category, commander in chief. President's different than anything else. It's an electability question. Republicans will come hard at any Democrat who doesn't seem qualified to make the tough calls as commander in chief. But also voters in general want somebody who can do that part of the job. It's unlike any other job. Wes Moore and Mark Kelly, 1 and 2. Wes Moore served in the military, as did Mark Kelly. They both understand the customs and policy issues related to national defense. So I make them 1 and 2. And this issue had receded a little bit after the Cold War, when Bill Clinton was able to get elected, even though his commander-in-chief credentials were pretty limited. We're in a different time now. It swung back a little bit because of Putin, because of Iran, because of North Korea. Commander-in-chief matters a lot to voters. Next, media coverage. Who can get good coverage? Number 1, I have Gavin Newsom. Number 2, Ro Khanna, 2 Californians. Both those guys are extremely savvy about how the press works. They talk regularly to reporters offline. They know what shows they want to be on. They know they monitor their coverage closely. They both understand that earned media press coverage across the board. And again, this has changed. In the old days, that was, Washington Post columnists and Des Moines Register news reporters and the major networks and news magazines. Now media coverage spans across lots of platforms, digital platforms, linear platforms, offline, online. Both those guys are very savvy in that area, and both tend to get relatively positive coverage, not uniform, but mostly. All right, next category in the rankings, buzz and momentum. Who understands how to be the it candidate? Who understands how to be considered hot with the capacity to say that person's on a roll? The virtuous cycle is as much about anything is about momentum. Gavin Newsom and Westmore, number one, number two. Right now, both those guys, if you look at the press clippings, if you look at the coverage, both those guys seem very hot, very aware of the need to be seen as the it candidate. And political body in motion tends to remain in motion. And I think because we're at a phase now where people aren't really going after other candidates, even below the radar, at least as far as I see it, they are still in motion. Both of those guys are doing very well, and success begets success. Once you get a good set of coverage, once you have a good fundraising report, once you do something that gets attention, more people want to see you. More reporters want to interview you. More bookers want to book you. More folks want a piece of you. And those guys have done a good job of getting that process going. Okay, this is a category that didn't exist in 2004 when I started this, which is the digital game. That means a lot of things. And number one, I have AOC. Number two, Gavin Newsom. It means making your own TikTok videos. It means knowing how to take someone's tweet attacking you and turn it around into something positive. If you ask all these folks and say, what kind of digital game do you have? Or maybe their staff, you got to be on every platform. You can't just have a game on X. You got to have a TikTok game. You got to have an Instagram game. And you have to know what to do to make that your own. The Mamdani in New York running for mayor, he set the standard. But AOC and Gavin Newsom are both extremely savvy. AOC has just owned a digital space ever since she got into politics. It's part of how she got elected originally. And Gavin Newsom wrote a book about this. He understands in this day and age, like, sure, go on Meet the Press. Sure. But that's not what it's about. It's about creating digital content that captures the public imagination. People talk about stuff that goes viral. And of course, they want to go viral, but they also want the capacity to consistently communicate with people. Not viral every time, but consistently use digital to communicate. All right, a couple more categories. Polling and name ID. Extremely important. People don't want to give you money unless they know you are. Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, two Californians. California, of course, our biggest mega state. They're both well known. She was vice president. He's governor and a frequent presence on TV. And that helps a lot. You'd be amazed at how people who've been governor or senator, how hard it is to get well known, particularly in the early states. People may be vaguely familiar with their names, but they don't know anything about them. Now, in the case of some candidates, and Harris and Newsom both have their detractors, name ID isn't necessarily all positive, but that's a key one. And those two, I think, are head and shoulders above the others. And that's partly why they do well in the polls. Okay. Fire in the belly, extremely important. Amy Klobuchar, number one, Pete Buttigieg, number two, both of whom ran in 2020, both of whom did very well and chose to get out of the race in 2020. Even though they were doing quite well, and they might have been able to beat Joe Biden, but Barack Obama and others convinced them to step aside. And this means you really want to be president and you really want to win the nomination. And if you decide to run, and I think in the end they'll both run, would be my hunch. You got to wake up every morning and ask yourself, what are the 10 things I need to do to get elected president? And then you got to do them. You have to burn for it. And I can't tell you the number of presidential candidates in both parties I've covered over the years who they're ambivalent. Their family's not sure about it. They're not sure. They're not sure they can win. You need the eye of the tiger to do this. And both Klobuchar and Buttigieg have that. All right. Lastly is staff and consultants. Candidates matter most, but I don't believe that Bill Clinton would have won necessarily without Carville and Begala, George Bush without Karl Rove. Donald Trump's an exception. He had some good people around him, but he was his own consultant. David Axelrod, David Plouffe with Obama, Barack Obama. Extremely important to be able to hire great people. And a lot of the challenge now in this cycle is so many of the experienced people been there, done that. They're at an age and a point in their careers where they don't want to do it. So you're going to have to find amongst the few people with experience who do want to do another presidential, the best people. And you need a combination of people you've worked with in the past who know you and are loyal to you, but also some new people. And I put Gavin Newsom number one, Rahm Emanuel number two. They both know who the right players are. They both know who to look for, who to hire. And I believe that if they run, they'll be able to have amongst the best consultants out there. All right, that's my first take on the invisible primary rankings. This is going to be something we revisit. I think if you go through that, you'll see there's a way to think about accumulating those results and say who the front runners are. Just at a glance, you'd say that Newsom and Westmore and Shapiro are the top three. And not by coincidence, those are the three who I think are the most likely to be the nominees if they do run.